I wish that every person who was a parent had to do all these things. Honestly, I was so thankful that we had to do those things because it just helped our family.
I found with training that I've had to take because I was respite and then I did my daycare before that it's actually served me in a lot of other different ways in life. It helps when I'm helping at church with the children's ministry. It helps how I respond to different types of situations in my life, even adults. And I think anyone actually could really benefit from those things.
For sure. One, I always tell people, you can do more than you think you can, and you can handle more than you think you can. And number two, you can change lives doing this.
Welcome to Packed with Purpose, a Care Package Inbound podcast. Care Package Inbound exists to deliver hope, and you, listening to this episode, you get a chance to be part of that hope. My name is Chris Youngdale, and I'm joined by
Jessica Sylvie.
Today's episode, we are joined once again by Ben and Nicole Long. On the last episode, yes, welcome you guys. On the last episode, we kind of talked through just their incredible journey, ups and downs, and not knowing that they were going to have a kid one day and then having a kid, same day. And so if you haven't listened to that episode, I would recommend jumping back and listening to that. That's episode 4. But today, I'm really excited. We get to talk about the process itself. Like, what does it take to become a foster parent? We want to hear about the classes, the challenges. We want to talk about home visits. What does that look like? And then for anyone that's going to listen to this episode, really, this is going to be for if I'm thinking about becoming a foster parent, I want them to be prepared for some of that. And I want to challenge them to take that step. So welcome, you guys.
Thanks. You.
I think at this point, you guys might just need your own podcast, right?
I think there's a couple people that have mentioned that.
That'd be pretty long.
Actually, well, that's okay.
Oh, pretty long.
You're like, actually,
that.
we have too much
boom.
content. Whatever.
Oh, wow. All right.
Interviewing each other about being parents.
I think that
Sharing funny
Have your kids
stories.
on.
there's a couple successful people that do that. It's just a husband and wife that interview each other about being parents. You could
That's
do it.
true.
You can do it.
We have a lot of content. We're not light on content. That's
Yeah.
for sure.
No, I don't think any parent actually is light on content.
Yeah,
For
sure.
Yeah, we're in the teenage phase right now. And okay. That's a whole episode by itself.
Sure is.
Well, talking about becoming foster parents, taking that first step, if you don't mind, we'll go back for those who maybe didn't hear on the first episode and talk to us about what brought you to that decision, taking that first step.
Yeah, we sought to adopt domestically on our newborns.
Yeah.
On our own accord, we were licensed with Angel Adoption. Actually, we tried to adopt in Haiti too, and we just always felt compelled. Both of us have felt compelled for a long time to adopt, and so eventually, what kind of led us to it was heartbreak through failed adoptions, really, that led us there to that point, and friends who just inspired us to go and be foster parents. And we finally just took the step and we said, hey, this is the next step where God has led us. There was all these breadcrumbs that just constantly kind of were put in front of us. And that's really what kind of spurred us into being foster parents in the fullness of it, which was, it's kind of scary because that really was not ever a part of our thought process of plans of how we would grow our family. Honestly, I don't think it was ever really a part of the discussion.
And for you guys, it was, and again, go back and listen to the last one, but for you, fostering was actually very short-lived. You kind of moved into adoption very quickly, but that doesn't mean that you didn't need to take all of the steps necessary to become foster parents.
For sure.
So would you say that it was easier or harder, starting that process than you expected?
I feel like it was pretty easy. We just kind of didn't really put too much thought into, should we? We just were like, we're doing it, and here we go.
It was always a we should feeling. Well, and you guys talked about even when you were dating and stuff, that was a conversation you had, right?
Yep.
And we already had a home study, so it's a little bit different for us because we had already been through all this home study process from an adoption standpoint. So because of that, when she said it's easy, that there was functional parts of it that were easier for us than it would be for somebody who just started doing foster care, right? And they didn't have any adoption background or anything else. There would be more paperwork or whatever you call it. And there's still quite a bit of paperwork.
Yes.
But I think also just the sadness and the devastation that we have felt, it just felt like, combined with our friends, it really felt like it's pretty obvious that God wants you to go in this direction to a certain degree. And so I think that's why it felt easier to take the step, I think, because there was a lot of felt defeated and sad and worn down from trying to adopt domestically, just adopt without having foster care involved and all.
Yeah. Yeah. What advice would you give somebody then, talking about just all of the emotional side of it too, but the steps, you guys took some of those steps kind of out of order from somebody traditionally. So thinking just first steps for anyone that's listening to the episode, what advice would you give somebody that's thinking about taking that first step, looking into fostering?
There's several privately contracted organizations that you can foster through that can help you get licensed. So just picking one of those and contacting them and just going through the process there.
Yeah.
So the process is like classes and background checks and stuff like that.
Yes.
Yeah, and you have to fill out like an application. So, I mean, you obviously have to go through the application process. You have to be approved. There's background checks. There's lots of things that you go on. But, I mean, the first step really to me is you just have to go on, pick who you want to go with as who's going to be your licensing organization, and then just start that process, And it's not I think sometimes people get kind of like stuck in the mud on some of that. And it's like, well, most people actually get licensed to do a part of their job, right? There's a large portion of the population that has to do licensing to do a part of their job. Like I'm a mortgage loan officer. I had to go through the licensing process. I had to actually take a big test, study for it for 6 weeks, and pass that test in order to be a loan officer. Yeah. So when you think about foster care and you're like, oh, if it's the classes that are kind of bogging you down or the training or the application, well, this is arguably much more important than probably your job to a degree, because you're taking care of children who have been through a lot of trauma and have it's even more important. So maybe not looking at it like, oh, it's this hard, annoying thing that we have to do. We have to take all these classes, and instead thinking of it like, well, wait a second. Attorneys have to do this. Doctors have to do this. Nurses have to do this. There's lots of different firefighters have to do this. And then you have to have continuing education as a part of it. And and these are vulnerable kids that you're coming alongside and taking care of and loving on. And so being licensed is really, really important, even though it definitely can feel a little like it's kind of like holding you back. You're like, well, I just want to help the kids, right? Like, why do I have to take the classes? Well, it's just a huge part of it.
Well, in the last episode, you even talked about, like, with parenting, you're not really handed a book of how to parent, but taking those classes, you're like, you kind of are. And if anything, like, it helped you parent your other children, your biological children, alongside it, because you have like trauma training and stuff like that. So I would think that, like, as you said, it's part of your job. I mean, there's nothing wrong with going over and thinking, okay, if anything, this is going to benefit me in this way. Even if you're not getting fully licensed, even if you decide that you want to just do a different part. I think being informed about the reality of what is foster care is huge. Even if you don't end up being a foster parent, there's so many things you can do. And sometimes the first step is just information, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And they'll have a person that will walk you through each step. And it's not like you have to figure it out yourself. They'll here's the places you can go get your fingerprints done. Here's where you have to send your stuff for background checks. And a lot of the things that we had to do were even helpful. I'm like, I wish that every person who was a parent had to do all these things. We had to have a carbon monoxide detector installed. Right. We had to make sure we had fire hydrants. Extinguishers in our kitchen.
We do not have fire hydrants in our house. Don't worry.
Right in the middle of the kitchen. They really would.
But everything was so helpful. Honestly, I was so thankful that we had to do those things because it just helped our family and in general.
I found with like training that I've had to take because I was respite and then I did my daycare before that it's actually served me in a lot of other different ways in life. Like it helps when I'm helping at church with the children's ministry. It helps how I respond to different types of situations in my life, even adults. And I think like anyone actually could really benefit from those things.
For sure.
So like I think that the idea that you just said, which is hey, you have to take licensing for part of your job. Like, you should really look into this, even if it's, just you start off with the trauma training, something like that, just to be more aware of your surroundings, on how to react to people, the realities of what that situation is a really big deal.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you never know when you can use it. I remember last summer we were at I think it was elementary school camp. I can't remember if it was middle school. I think maybe it was middle school camp. Anyways, for a church, and there was a boy who got into it with multiple other boys in a game they were just playing. And he was definitely like the antagonist towards the situation. I know this kid really well, and I know he has been fostered, and I know that he's had some pretty rough trauma things, and I've been around him enough times, and I think my experience as a dad and as a person who's gone through the training twice, very quickly recognized that what they were doing to him in retaliation was not going to end up being a really good positive thing, and that he wasn't going to be able to take it like with humor and just move on from it like a lot of kids would.
Yeah.
And so I intervened myself in that situation more aggressively, probably, and everybody else kind of stood and watched, and I think they were thinking it would just be fine. And then I ended up taking him and actually one of our kids and like going off by ourselves during one of the sessions, because I could just tell both of them needed to kind of have a separation from the group. But that's because of taking those classes and having the experience, obviously, of being a father too. But just being in those classes, like, there's just an awareness. You just understand it. Some of their brain functionality just doesn't. It's not going to flow the same way as maybe most kids would.
Yes.
So just like you said, you just recognize things, and that's not that. That's just being at a camp for kids for Jesus. That's not, that wasn't, there was no, it's not like there's no foster care aspect to that. There was no adoption thing. That was just that recognition. But if it wasn't for those classes, I don't think I wouldn't have been able to understand that probably
That
as
awareness
quickly
is
and
big.
recognize it so fast.
Yeah.
sure.
I know that there's a lot of time is just supporting other foster families, foster parents, so on and so forth, and being understanding on what they're saying, what they're going through, the rules in place, and just being that support network. And I don't think have enough of that, honestly. Like, I've definitely seen a shift recently where there's more people wanting to support. And if you're looking like, okay, I can't become a foster parent, but I want to be an educated supporter, I think that's another thing that you can do just so that you can communicate with those foster parents, be able to have that understanding. So it's just an extra support system in all of this, which is what we all truly need.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and you could take like respite classes or something that's a little bit shorter format to be able to do that too.
Exactly.
So you wouldn't have to necessarily put in as much time.
Yeah, but I think putting in the time is important. I think you'll get something out of it. The awareness side of it is just huge, and I connect with that so much. I think that training goes through a lot of other things in life, and when you invest in something and then you're able to see it and call it out, you can be used in a different way. And I think you can step in with education, and now we're not causing potentially more trauma or issues, but we're actually trying to foster, restoration or healing or reconciliation, something along those lines, which is really good. So let's jump into that training process then.
Sure.
So you had said something, Nicole, that I think is important for our audience to understand, and for those who are looking at jumping into foster care. You had found a private organization to be able to do this training through. So it's not like there's one company in the U.S. or organization or the government that runs like every aspect of it.
Not a huge umbrella. And we say that because there is a interpretation of what foster care is. And so when we'll talk to people that really don't understand a lot, because let's be honest, foster care has been shoved under the rug for the last 80 years. Like, no one talks about it as they should. And so we have this concept in our head that foster care organization is this umbrella organization that is just one whole thing over all of the United States. And that's not how it works at all. Yeah. Can you explain a little bit more of what that looks like in reality?
Yeah, I mean, specifically in Kansas, I believe there's 4 privately contracted organizations that take care of the licensing and monitoring of the foster parents. And so we went through KBC. And we have a unique experience also where we fostered first in Missouri, and then we also got licensed in Kansas, which each state is very different, and because it's privately contracted. And so with KVC, you can even go on that website and there's videos and frequently asked questions, and you can kind of find out what the process looks like. But that's specifically who we went through.
Yeah, it's almost like it's not the FBI, right? It's more like local police departments that are kind of managing it to a certain degree, right?
Yeah, that's
It's
a really
like
good example.
Like a regional, you know, it's like the state, whatever,
Yeah.
the California Bureau of Investigations, the CBI, and then you have police stations kind of underneath that, so to speak, that kind of manage it. And it flows differently depending on where you are and how you sign up. For sure. But so, like, as an example, when we got licensed in Missouri, we went to weekly classes for, I think, 10 weeks, maybe 12 weeks, something in there. I mean, that was 15 years ago. So it's like a long time ago. But then when we got licensed on the Kansas side for our youngest child, we actually went to a more compact version. It was kind of like the summer class version of, you know how you have your semester long classes for college and then you have the summer, you pack it in like 8 weeks. That's kind of how it was. I think we took like 4 or 5 classes, but it was like they were 5 or 6 hours. Each.
Yeah.
So it was on a Saturday. So they actually formatted up so that you could do it either way at most places. I think KBC has that. Like, hey, I can do weeknights, or for some people, I can do Saturdays.
And they do have online virtual classes now, which they did not have when we were. Yep.
That's nice, like the flexibility on it.
Yes.
Yeah. Because, like, even when we were talking before, like, even if you just want to be informed, like, to be able to have the flexibility would be wonderful.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what were some of the topics that you guys covered then during the classes?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's lots of stuff that they cover. I mean, I think the trauma part is probably the most.
We had like modules, which I, as a teacher, I enjoyed going through.
Yes.
But
You're like, this is so well formatted.
exactly. Yeah. Trauma, discipline, which I appreciated. Again, as a parent, different tools in your tool belt that you can use.
Yeah, I think the brain trauma piece is probably the most important thing for me, and just understanding how different kids or people can react to certain situations based on the trauma that they've had in their life. I think it's also important when you're sitting in the class to really be able to soak it in and understand that these are, because they explain real life situations, right? Real life of examples. Like there's a lot of that. And sometimes it can be very sobering or depressing or very sad. But I think it's also just really important for you to understand the reality of what happened to the kids or what's happening to the kids or their experiences and the stories that come alongside that and the trauma of thinking about a child who's been to 5 or 6 or 7 homes and how they then interact with people as a result of that. So the classes are really good about, like, they'll start with an example, right? They'll say, okay, a young man is 8 years old and he went into foster care and he was 2 years in this foster home, and then there was a divorce in that home, and so he had to be moved to this home, and he was in respite for 2 or 3 weeks back and forth, and now he's coming into your home. And these are the 3 to 4 things that happened in his life that were really significant. And then they'll ask you questions, and you have to discuss that with either your spouse or probably like 4 or 5 people that are in your zone, so to speak, and to say, how would you deal with this? How would you deal with this? How would you do it? And they'll ask you specific questions, or they'll bring up something as simple as like, the kid doesn't want to ride his bike. And it's like, why doesn't he want to ride his bike? And then it's like, so you're discussing this, what could possibly, and then they'll tell you like, well, this child in their background, whatever, something to do with a bike that caused trauma, as an example. So
it's tools to be able to get to the root of whatever the child is displaying, essentially. So it's kind of like counseling techniques. Like you're kind of becoming a counselor or therapist in a sense, which is really a parent.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But those are important tools no matter who you are. But I think that's big, because I think best intentions for any foster parent, I would hope, is this is just going to be amazing, right? This child's going to come into my life and I'm just going to show them a bunch of love, and it's just going to be rainbows and butterflies and sundresses and all of this kind of stuff. And it's like, well, wait a second. They come in with a lot of trauma.
Yes.
And maybe that trauma is not displayed right up front. It is very hidden, and we need to kind of peel that back and understand it. And it might go great for the first couple weeks, and then all of a sudden something happens, and out of nowhere how did we get here?
Right.
And there's like this fight or this emotion or door slams or whatever it might be. And if we don't have the tools to be able to take a step back and be like, well, wait a second, let's talk about the why you don't want to ride a bike.
Yes.
Right? What is that about?
Yes.
Do you think
that's big?
And don't you think the food thing was, you felt like you learned a lot about that?
Yeah,
From that
yeah.
side.
There was a lot of how you just eating habits, food. I feel like there was interacting with the biological family, going to court, what to do at the school, how you can advocate for the kids, and do if they come in with an IEP.
I think the food stuff I learned a lot because I never really thought about that. I never thought.
Can you what do you mean by that?
I just never thought about a lot of the trauma that's associated with food that comes with kids who are in foster care. So like a lot of times they'll hoard food because at their biological home, maybe they just didn't have very much food. And so if they saw food, they would just kind of hoard it. Or or sometimes they didn't have a lot, if they didn't have a lot of access to food, when they're given the access, it's like it's like their brain has no self-control, right? And they'll just eat too many snacks or they eat too many. It's almost like, if you don't, like we don't have a lot of soda in our house as an example. So in general, if soda comes into our house, our children, we have to be very specific about when they can have it because otherwise they would just always go get it because we don't really have soda in our house that much. And so in the same way, I think when kids come into foster care and they come into a house and there's just a snack tub and there's a snack pantry, well, at their house, maybe they didn't have snacks, and they're like, oh my gosh, there's snacks whenever I want to get snacks. Goodness, I can just go grab a snack. And then they just eat 8 snacks in an hour. And if you're, even been trained, we have done this. You're like mad. You're like, how could you guys eat all the snacks?
My dad used to call us locusts when we were kids for that exact reason.
Oh my gosh.
I did hear a study one time talking about food, specifically this particular idea. And it was talking about the different social demographics and how they view food. And so you have like the lower income that they usually view food in quantity. Middle class usually views food as quality, and then higher income usually views food as presentation. And so it's those different things. And so a lot of people will have this misunderstanding where like these children are coming into foster care, and some of them are severely underfed, just so you know.
Yes,
but there's other ones like if they're larger, they're like, how could they be larger? And we're like, it's actually the same mentality.
Yeah.
Is like you don't know when your next meal is going to happen, and so you and then what will happen, which I think what you're kind of going to, is we think, okay, we need to monitor and be really, really careful with these foods, but sometimes people do it in an unhealthy way, like they'll lock it up or something like that, and not knowing that although they're trying their best to help the child, that can sometimes trigger even more severe reaction.
Right.
And so, yeah, I think like the classes and the understanding, like so much of what we do is just trying to understand the brain.
Absolutely.
And what's going on with our child and that emotional health. And you said something on the last episode that I thought was really good. And you said it's not about us. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think one of the things we were talking about preparing for this was what was one of the biggest things you got from the classes. And that was one of the lines that just stuck out to me. If I didn't remember anything else, which is not hard because my memory is full, and it
gotta
edit. When they said, "You aren't here to take the kids; you're here to take care of the kids," and that it's just about them and their and how they can be ministered to, and that was really really humbling to me because I think about, and you hear in a good way and a bad way people, I couldn't do foster care. I couldn't let the kids go. I couldn't. But then you hear a lot of I couldn't, and it's like, oh man, but what about these kids?
Yeah.
Or, let's think about the kids. So
Yeah, and playing into that, it's like you're in the class, I think there was a lot of humility that I experienced.
Yes.
And just thinking like, how do you help this child heal and be taken care of? And part of that is understanding the control aspect is a really big deal when it comes to trauma. And like even something like food can be like a control mechanism for them. And so understanding how that what should I battle with? And it's like, I remember for a long time in our house, you couldn't have a snack in your bed. And finally, at some point, it was convinced overall that it's really not that big of a deal. It's not a great long-term habit, but for this child, they snack in their bed. And still, to this day, that same child does snack in their bed or eats a half dinner. Now, sometimes you just eat dinner in your bed anyways because you're trying to get them upstairs. But,
Just go to sleep.
But I think being in the classes, you really like learn that. You just have you develop a different point of view with it. It doesn't mean you like completely change your mind, but it just means like you have this awareness and understanding that, hey, just looking at a singular situation and saying, why is this child so mad that they can't have a forced snack? It's like it's more than that, and understand that. And it's really good because they give a lot of examples in the class that I think are very practical and are real life examples. Like I said, that really helped me personally to just like have better understanding of it.
Yeah. So a couple questions that I think audience might be thinking.
Yeah.
One, do the classes cost anything? How much do they cost?
Good question.
And two, can you fail a class and like be denied being a foster parent?
Good question. It does not cost anything. It's free, which is great. And you just have to get signed up and get started. I don't know
if you can fail. I'm sure you could fail but I would think that would come up more in the background check.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there was one class that we were in. I think it was one of the first ones where I feel like the people who taught it pulled aside a couple because I think halfway through they were gone. And I think it was just like they heard different things that they were saying and that they were concerned about. I don't remember this.
Yeah.
I think it was like discipline oriented, honestly, if I remember right.
Yeah.
That the way they were referencing physical discipline, especially, was just not appropriate.
Yeah.
And they heard it referenced enough that they basically kind of like interviewed / kind of called them on it, and then they just kind of asked them to just kind of move on because they just didn't think that the mentality they had was really appropriate. But I think generally speaking, no, you don't. And I think a lot of people, I mean, one of the things we experienced was there's a lot of people who go into a foster care class just to adopt. And I think what happens is do it. Go in just to adopt. I would be very shocked if the Lord allows you to stay in that state of mind. Because lots of people will change their mind. A lot of people in the class will change their mind. And by the end of the class, they will be foster to adopt parents instead of just adopt parents. Because that's actually two different distinctions. You can take a class and just be adopt only, or you can take the class, be foster only, or you can take the class and be foster and adopt. And there's a lot of parents who, if they're trying to start their family, they'll just enter in as adopt. But then they end up changing their mind and realizing, well, wait a second, the need is more why I'm in this class other than me gathering a child to myself. It's more about the need of the children.
When I remember one of our classes, there was a couple that was there for that, and they literally told him in front of the whole class, like, if you're here just to adopt,
and it was a newborn.
You should, a newborn.
It was a newborn
you
only.
should probably either change your mind or go somewhere else because
Might not be the right fit.
likelihood of that is so slim that we don't even want to wait.
Although we'd rather have you in the class.
Yes. Yes. But if that's your
learn.
goal,
But
you're probably not going to
That's
meet
hard.
that goal.
I think that's wise, though, because, again, it's not about you.
Yeah.
You kept hearing the I statements, I, or me. It's not about you.
Yeah.
It's about the kids.
Exactly.
And I love that can see a heart transformation in actually realizing the true need and having your heart turn towards that need. It's not about me. It's about the kids.
Yeah.
So while you might not be able to fail the class, there is something called a home study.
Yeah.
And that might be a different story. That might be where we hit some red flags.
True. Yes.
Now, you guys went through home study before the foster classes, so kind of out of order a little bit, or does a home study typically come first?
Well, I think that, in our situation, we already had a home study. But still, when we went into foster care, you actually have to adjust that because it's a different style and format in the actual paperwork for the home study.
Yeah.
The home study feels pretty arduous at times, I would say. That's probably one of the more arduous parts of it. I think the classes can feel kind of like, sometimes it might feel like, gosh, do we have to go to the class again? But really, you get so much out of the classes that honestly any parent in America would highly benefit from going to foster care parenting classes. I just there's no way they couldn't. We would benefit right now. We have 8 kids. We've been parenting for 15 years, right? So, but the home study part, I would say, requires organizational perseverance. You know, like you just have to be organized. You have to stay at it. You have to answer all the questions. You have to take the time at your house. You have to stop watching your Netflix whatever show and just say, we're taking 2 hours on a Tuesday night. We're taking 2 hours on a Thursday, and we're just working through this and just keep going. That is what I would say. If you're doing the home study, you just keep going because there's a lot of questions, a lot of gathering of information. And sometimes you even have to go ask your parents for information because it's about your family background and maybe you don't even know, which is good. It's not a bad thing. But the home study, it's a good exercise. It's an arduous exercise, but that's okay. Anything that's really important usually is. Like people who train to be sports athletes, they have to go lift weights and they don't like to lift weights.
Yes.
But they still have to go lift weights. They like to play football, but you have to lift weights if you want to play football. You can't just go out and you have to stretch, right? Stretching is not – who's excited about stretching, right? NBA Finals was last night, and those guys are on the court 3 hours before going through an hour-long routine in order to play in the game. And they have all this other stuff. So that's just, you know, and foster care is way more important than the NBA Finals.
I think the most intimidating part for me was they come into your home and do like a home interview. Very long. But once we got started, you know, you just realize they're there to make sure that there's no red flags, that your home is safe. And it's not like they're looking for this huge mansion. You know, I think each kid requires a bed and just sufficient bedroom space. And so once I feel like the caseworker came or the social worker came, it was a lot, you know, it was actually kind of fun to just share our family background and story. And it wasn't as intimidating as it was anticipating it would be.
But the beginning feels like it.
Yes.
Like when that initial person, when they come into your house or when you're anticipating them coming to your house, it's definitely a little bit nervous. You definitely have some nerves, kind of like going for a job interview in some ways.
It reminds me a little bit like my daughter, she's in ballet and they're getting ready for this huge performance that's going out right now. And she keeps getting jitters right before like the practice and stuff like that. And we have to tell her over and over again, these people do not want you to fail.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That's a good, that's a great way to put it.
They're here to help you improve so that you can do your best. But no one, not even on the day of, do they want you to fail. They want to see you succeed. And I think that's the same way. Because I used to feel the same way when I had a daycare. Because I think I had like 4 different entities that would come in and do drop-in visits all the time with the daycare. Because it's incredibly important. But they never wanted to see you fail.
Right.
You know, and you would have to get that mentality switch. And so, yes, you can get the jitters, but that person is there to try to help you succeed.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yep, agreed.
Yeah.
That's a great analogy. They want you to be successful. They don't want to do a rubber stamp and say, no, you're out.
And they're not looking for perfection.
No, they're not.
Right. You know, they're looking for, I think, intentionality behind it.
Yeah.
Why are you actually doing this?
Yes.
It's kind of getting a feel for who you are. Is the environment safe?
Yeah.
Right? Are there a bunch of knives out everywhere because you build hunting material or something? I don't know, right? You know, just something out there.
We've removed the warning labels from everything.
So I think that's
thing
good.
One time, and it was talking about like a foster parent trying to get ready for a social worker drop-in, and they were like folding all of the laundry on the couch like as quickly as they could, and the social worker came in and started helping them fold the laundry. And I think that's a little bit more of what it is. It's not like your home doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to take a snap picture of it and post it on Pinterest for you to be approved for being a foster parent. It is like you are real. Your social workers and your home visit people, they know that you're real. And I think that they would actually prefer that over some fake manicured, this is how perfect our home is.
I think they see through that, actually.
I think they do too.
Fake,
yeah.
Totally.
You know, they're going to be like, this isn't, come on. Nobody
and also just remembering, like, they've been in houses where this wasn't a good option, right? And then, like, they can clearly, I think they can clearly see that. I mean, one of the things they talked about in the classes I remember was they really kind of attacked people, I would say, who were there if it was money-oriented, which sounds really bizarre, but there are people who actually go and be foster parents because you do get paid money. They do give you money to take care of the children. That's a part of being a foster parent. And there are people who actually, that's what, they go do it for the money, which is kind of like really hard to understand.
Because it's really not a lot of money. Like
it's
when you
not
think
that
about
much,
it, and you're like, because I think about how much money, like to clothe, feed, and if my child is in any kind of activity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like there's no way that's
Yeah.
going to cover it. And so like I think that's like there are people that do, but when you really think about it, you're like, how does that make sense?
Yes.
You
And
know?
I think they sniff those people out. So it's like if your
Yeah.
heart's in the right place, like, your heart's more important than the way your house looks. Obviously, your house has to functionally be a certain way. But the cool thing is when they come to your house, they're just going to tell you if there's issues with your house. They'll just tell you, hey, you need a fire extinguisher here. You need you don't have
Not a fire hydrant.
not a fire hydrant. No fire hydrants, please.
As fun as that sounds.
You should just get a fake one and put it in your home.
That's
Like-
awesome.
like a
But
foam
they'll
fire
just
hydrant.
tell you,
I figured
right?
out the gift.
They'll just tell you if it's messed up. So if there's something wrong, they just tell you and they'll just give you a list and then you just go fix those things. I think some people get like real worked up about that, thinking, oh, am I going to have this right? And it's like, well, if your heart's in the right place, like they recognize that and they'll just tell you, here's 3 things you need to change before we license you. And then we'll just come back and check again.
Yeah.
But that's like a home inspection. If you're buying a house,
Yeah.
they're going to say, hey, there's 4 things. It doesn't mean the house is not a good house.
Yeah.
It just means those 4 things need to get switched before you buy the house.
Yeah.
Good
So-
bones.
Yeah.
Good bones, yeah.
Good bones. Your house has good bones.
Got great bones. So we've gone through the classes. There's a lot there. We've gone through some of the home study stuff, and now we're getting ready to welcome the child into the home. I think that's another area where many people might feel like they need to be 100% prepared, but that's kind of not reality either, because there are times where you might not know what child you're bringing into the home.
You leave and you come home with a baby.
What? That doesn't happen.
I don't think that's ever happened. So there might be a story about that, somewhere. I don't know.
2
We'll have to
times.
talk to that couple. We'll have them on the podcast. No, that's in the last podcast, so go listen to it. I think it's amazing. But talk through the process of welcoming them into the home now. The child actually is coming into the home. And I think that there's a lot of examples that we know of where they arrive with absolutely nothing. And so what do you do in that situation?
Yeah.
Well, I think one thing that's important to remember too is like when you're in the class, you essentially determine what kind of, I don't want to say what kind of child you want because that's not really what I mean, but you tell them I would like no children over the age of 10.
Yes.
You tell them I just want boys as an example, because maybe you have 3 sons and you're like, I don't know if girls would be a great fit.
Yeah.
And you could tell them I want kids between 4 and 12. Now there's kind of sibling groups.
special
Do I want 2?
needs.
Do I want 1? Special needs, something we could.
Yeah.
So I think that's important to remember because
Yeah.
that like naturally gives you some like practical preparedness to say,
For sure.
okay, I'm only taking kids under 5.
Yeah.
So you don't have clothes for a 12-year-old. You don't have a bed for a 12-year-old.
Yes.
You don't have stuff that a teenager would want. You just have stuff that's ready for 5 and under.
That's
And
great.
so I think that part, like the practical part of it, I think is really helpful to remember that. Because I think some people think right now they're listening and they're thinking, well, I don't know what kid would I get? What? No, you like you go through the class, and as you go through the class, you and your spouse discuss it, and you become comfortable based on the genders of your kids, the ages, and all that stuff. But in terms of them coming to the
That's
house,
important.
Yeah. But even then, like I know that there's sometimes that you'll have a social worker and you say you're like, okay, I only want 5 and under. That you might still get a call that says, hey,
yeah,
I know you said you only wanted 5 and under little girls, but we have a
Yes.
6-year-old little boy and he needs a home for a week.
Yes.
And that happens.
Yeah,
And,
that's- yeah.
You know,
Or a
and
respite.
or a respite or something
Yeah.
like that. Because let's be honest, we do not have enough beds.
No.
Yeah.
And so, although you can prepare for that, which you should, you might get thrown a loop, and it's just how open your heart is to and how flexible you are for that loop. And so, yes, prepare for everything, but also
Yes.
expect the unexpected.
Yes. And
Yeah.
I think that's where one of the many areas where community is important. And I think there were things that we didn't have. And it's like you call, your pastor up or your friend, hey, do you have this thing? We just got this kiddo. And so I think that's where it's important to have community and support where people can help you. And then run to Walmart if you need to.
Yep.
But just kind of having a general, area, you kind of know what a kiddo might need. So I know for some of our kids, we would save and have tubs of clothes
Yes.
that they had worn or outgrown. And so just kind of having, which I don't know, for me as a mom, that's kind of fun to kind of prepare and nest a little bit. There's kind of a nesting sense for a foster mom or dad. And so,
Yeah, and that's kind of where our bags come in, is trying to help with that
Yes.
transition
Love
period.
those.
Because, like, let's say you get a kid at 11 o'clock at night, which is, believe it or not rare, or 2 kids at 11 o'clock at night. what you don't want to have to be doing is going through okay, I have to get this essential and this toothbrush and make sure they have jammies and something to wash them with. Like, it's so impactful for not only you guys, but the child to be able to go, okay, we have these things. We know you have these things. Let's focus on that emotional health.
Yes.
Let's focus on how you're actually doing and how this day is. Because let's just be honest, they're having a bad day.
Absolutely.
You know, and we found when provided with those essentials, not only is the social worker able to focus on emotional health better, because otherwise they're running to a warehouse trying to get something for some kind of change.
Right.
And then the child feels more loved because all of a sudden they have more value than this trash bag full of stuff.
Yes.
But then you guys, with that training, are able to take that and go, okay, we can worry about those things tomorrow or in 2 days.
That's fantastic.
And so, like, we have found that it helps with the bonding, the initial bonding, and in helping with that, it actually helps with placement longevity.
Yes.
And so, yes, absolutely prepare, because, I mean, we don't make enough bags for everyone yet anyways.
Right.
We're working on it. But what that impact has and, like, what we're trying to achieve in Care Package Inbound is that longevity of placement and supporting not only the child, but also the foster parents and hopefully that emotional connection that you can get with those children. So.
Which, you know, as I was looking back on our training, just thinking of, you know, when a kid comes into your home, they don't know often why am I here? I'm not at home. Did I do something wrong? And if you just really like start to unpack those thoughts of what's going on through the kid's head, that can just, you know, the importance of being able to emotionally connect with them and support them and not have to worry about going to the store is huge. You know, it's just heartbreaking to think they might not even know why they're there and they miss their parents and
it's gigantic. And I also think even more for a mom, I don't know if that makes sense, but moms are lean towards like that practical provision of clothes, food, etc. And so I think even for Nicole, like just thinking about what you were talking about, Nicole would have been much more comfortable and it would have been much easier for her to bond, I think, with our foster kids. That was harder for her, even just having something like a backpack. Because the dad is usually going to be the one who's like, okay, I'll just hang out here while you go to Walmart. And it's like, well, that is like 2 hours. That's like the first 2 hours. And kind of like when you have a baby, they don't put the baby on the dad usually, right? They put the baby on the chest of the mama. That's where it starts. And so I think even, you know, from that emotional standpoint, there was some bonding stuff that was harder for Nicole than for me. And I think part of that was just her natural affinity to provide the practical things that they needed, right? To be able to live and have clothes and feel comfortable and all those things. And even if they're not coming from their bio family, like our kids came from another foster care house. And for sure, our oldest felt like he had done something wrong, that he was moving from one foster care family to another family.
Yeah.
And so that's, I mean, it's a real thing for those kids that they feel like that. And they just kind of, and they, you know, they might prepare them, but it's still,
and they
still
might
really,
not even
really
have
hard.
what they need moving from home to home within the foster care system.
Yeah.
And it's not always that, like, people get this, you know, villainizing point of view with that. They're like, oh, the old foster parents kept all their stuff. Not necessarily. Sometimes it takes time to get those items to them. Or sometimes like there's so many different scenarios that we couldn't even go through all of them. But like just having the ability to rest and going, I'm taken care of for this point of time, or they're taking care of for this point of time. And you just made an amazing point talking about like how they put them on the mom. And I remember when my babies were born, they laid them on my chest, and my first thoughts were, what color are they? Do they have all their fingers and toes? And are they cold? And like literally, and it's exactly that, like caring for them. I was like, okay, I have to feed them and I have to warm them. And you don't think about the other things. Your immediately thought process is, how do I take care of this incredibly fragile human? You know, and then I think my husband's first thing was to guard the door because he, you know, ex-police officer, he's like, no, I'm going to make sure that my family's safe. And like you think of providing safety and stability, and the mother is thinking about, hey, how do I make sure that the little tiny needs are taken care of? It's part of how we are wired as human beings. You're right. But it's hard to take that bonding when you have to like go away from that baby to be able to take care of it, or child. You know?
Because as a dad, you're like, oh, what do you like? What do you like to do?
You want to go play ball?
You're like, you've been here
know
for
you.
10 minutes. You're like, do you like to play soccer? Okay, let's go kick a soccer ball. Do you like to shoot baskets? And then the mom's like, do we have enough things for lunch? Do we have their clothes for tomorrow?
Yeah.
How many pairs of shoes do they have?
Yeah,
Like
do they have
that's going through the
pajamas to
mom's
sleep in
head.
tonight?
Yeah.
But like, let's not underestimate like the importance of a dad in that role. Like my husband, I used to joke around that I didn't as itty bitty babies, you don't see quite the importance of the husband as that protective things. But when they get a little bit older, I remember taking my kids out. We were at Devil's Tower or something like that. And my daughter was, I think, 6. And in Devil's Tower, they have these boulder fields. And it's literally boulders on top of boulders on top of boulders. And my husband told my 6-year-old daughter, here, jump from that boulder to that boulder over there. And I'm thinking, there is a crevasse. This is bad, But he told me, he's like, she needs to know she can.
Yeah.
And so there's such an importance in dads. And so I told him, I was like, I'm going to walk away with our 4-year-old and you're going to return my daughter to me as unmaimed as possible,
I like it.
And so, but afterwards she did. She had so much more confidence and stuff like that. So like, telling that story, it is important to have dads in these roles. And like that throwing that ball, that talking about the baseball, that might be the thing that helps them release that guard, And like both mothers and fathers are so important in these families. And so
For sure. But the lunch they're about to have after that is really
Exactly.
to your point.
And it's nutritional.
They both have a value.
And they're going to go to bed in a clean sheets and stuff like that. And that's mom. That's mom doing that undercurrent. And dad's doing like, hey, let's open up and talk. It's so important for both of them.
For sure.
Yeah.
And I think to that point, though, just to those listening that might be single and still looking to foster, it doesn't mean you're disqualified.
No.
Like, still run into it, right?
Yep.
Like, if you have a heart to be able to just love on children, it's not about you, it's about them. I would still challenge them to take the classes.
Yeah, we
But
have
you
a guy.
absolutely find your
his
village.
son was on our soccer team.
Yeah.
And they just moved. But he had 2 foster boys.
Yeah.
And he was just
And
single.
he was awesome.
He was great.
Yeah.
Super nice. Loved the kids. Hard kids to love. Challenging kids to a certain degree. And he was great by himself, just doing it solo.
And that's why a
Amazing
village
job.
is important, though. Like,
Yeah.
I have a couple of friends that are foster parents, and they've just really leaned into that village. Because, like, yes, all of those points are incredibly important, but it doesn't mean that you have to do it alone.
Yeah.
And again, that goes into stepping up, taking those classes, being informed.
Yeah, because honestly, it can feel a little isolating and lonely at times because we didn't have a lot of friends that fostered and people sometimes don't understand what that looks like. And so I think it's so important to have that community because sometimes people who aren't as passionate about it, it's kind of foreign and scary to them. And it can be lonely sometimes.
Yeah, it's like talking to your friend about sports who doesn't like sports. And they're listening to you, but it's like you can tell they don't really know what you're saying. Or like your wife, if you're talking to your wife about something, or your wife's talking to you about gardening like Nicole does, and I'm like, I'm listening, I don't really know. It tastes good when it comes in the house.
Yeah.
All the other stuff in between, I don't really care. And with foster care, it's like that. And I remember there was a couple couples in our life, they didn't know, but they just listened, and I thought that was really important. And they weren't judgmental, and they didn't necessarily give you a lot of advice, but I thought they were just good listeners, which is a huge value.
Yeah.
So like just if you have people who are foster parents, man, just listen to them, just sit with them, and just understand that it is really difficult and hard. And just being able to listen to them is just an amazing gift.
Yeah, you don't have to solve all the problems, but just be there.
Yes.
Just,
Ask
And
them
not
how
look
they
at them like
are.
they're weird.
Yeah.
And not look at them like their kids are weird.
We have a joke with our
you
friends.
are weird, Ben. So
Thank you.
that's not because you're a foster parent.
Well,
We have
that's
a
true.
joke with our friends. We went on a vacation to Florida, and these are all our best friends from college. And we had our 3 foster kiddos and our bio kid, and they all had one baby. And we still look back and laugh, but we got put in a house. They all stayed in the big house with their one baby, and we're in this house with our 4 kids.
It was not a house. It was like a
It was
shack.
a shack.
We had to put
It
our
was-
luggage on the porch.
That's
Oh my
character
And they were
goodness.
like, okay, you guys are out there. We still laugh about it, but
They're trying their hardest.
They were trying.
Well, we've covered a lot today, so thank you for that. But I think that there's more that I'd love to hear as we kind of wrap up, and it's that call to action. It is that I'm ready to take that step, and I think the step is really important. And I hope that there are those that are very stirred on this episode and encouraged to take that step. There's a movie, Sound of Hope. Possum Trot. My wife and I
goodness.
watched that, and I don't do
Highly
a lot
recommend.
of movie recommendations, but that is a high recommend.
Yes.
And there was a challenge at the end. It's based on a true story. And just from a data perspective, this is interesting to me, there are 332,000 Protestant Christian churches in the United States. There are 331,000 kids in the system right now, and about 70,000 of those looking to be adopted. That means that not even one family out of every church, if they were to step up, I mean, statistically, like
Imagine.
we could make such a big difference.
Yes.
And so I want to challenge those listening.
Yes.
What would you say to that? And I'm going to tie this in with the question that we ask at the end of every episode. If this episode were a backpack, what would you want somebody taking away, carrying away from this conversation?
I have two things real quick. One, I always tell people you can do more than you think you can, and you can handle more than you think you can. And number two, you can change lives doing this, generations of families. We just met a kid last weekend who was reffing a football game. Ben got to talking to him, and he was in the foster system, many homes, and he was like, and here he is, he's going to be a lineman. He was reffing football. Electrical lineman. And just to see like his confidence, and he was like, my dad adopted me and he changed my life. And I was very humbled by that. So you can do more than you think you can, and you can change lives doing this.
Ben?
Yeah, and it's one of the great failures of the American church, unfortunately, is that everybody likes to talk about doing things for the least of these, but probably the largest group of least of these in America is probably foster kids, honestly. So a lot of things that get more play. There's a lot of protests and things that go on that get more attention. But foster kids are probably the largest group of least of these that if you are an American Christian and you believe in Jesus, there is probably not a group of people that you could better serve than kids who are in foster care. And so the action step would be log on, go on KBC's website, go on Cornerstones to Care website, do a Google search, and go start the process. Fill out an application. Don't overthink it. Obviously, pray about it. Obviously, discuss it with your spouse. Or if you're single, discuss it with your best friends, whatever. But just go take the steps to start that process. By filling out the application or doing a home study or going to the classes doesn't mean you're going to have 7 kids at your house. That's not what it means. Yeah. It means that you are just starting the process of where God would be able to use you and whatever that means. And it might mean you just have one foster care child. Might mean you're just a respite individual who just helps people on the weekends like once or twice a month. But just go take those steps and take the fear out of your mind and just lay it before the Lord and know that, hey, 50 years from now, 100 years from now, I seriously doubt that you're going to regret that decision and that opportunity to change and impact lives.
I don't know. I think that I think we talked a lot about like getting ready. And of course, we talk about like funding and ways that people can help. And I think that my main thing is in the last couple of weeks, we've built 630 bags.
Praise God.
Yeah, which is amazing. And we just got another 210 of them out yesterday. Yeah. So like really amazing. And I think that we talked a little bit about how everyone can help in some way. Specifically with us is like we need people to step up and help funding because you want to make a difference. You can't necessarily go ahead and be a respite person or anything like that. You can still make small differences, big differences. The one that's specifically on mine right now is like we need 4 more large packing events before the end of this year to get paid for. And if you can't do that, then you can go on and you can sponsor one kid and you can make a difference in that one kid. And it's not about you. It's about what this child needs at that time. Yeah. So I guess it's kind of a shameless plug is talking about like, yeah, we need people to step up. We need those people to come and help with funding because as much fun as it is when people are like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you do that. It's not free. It's never free. Any of the things that we do isn't free. We still live in this world, you know? And so I think that's my big thing is like making sure that you take the appropriate step that you can take right now. Don't sit back and be like, man, I hope somebody does something about that. Remember that you are somebody. And like I like to think about the fact that I felt that so deeply and thinking, oh, but I'm not that somebody. Somebody else. No, you are somebody. Yeah. Do that one thing that you can do right now.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people writing checks for people to play sports in college.
Yeah.
They might take a little bit of that money and write a check to Care Package Impound or
Yeah.
somewhere else where they can help change lives in a very dramatic way. That kid is probably going to play sports in college no matter what. So you could take your money instead of giving it to the University of Kansas and give it to Care Package Impound or
Exactly.
going
And
to K-State or whatever.
It's like, how are we getting into the original DNA of these kids? How are we getting into that first mindset? And that's what we're doing. We're changing the first moments, you know? And in the long term, like, how does that ripple effect and snowball throughout their whole lives?
Yeah.
And we would like to think that really does make that difference. And so, yeah, that's, I guess, my thing for today is do the thing that somebody should do.
Ooh, that's good. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, take that first step, right? Like many people, it's so hard to just take that first step. And that first step, honestly, for a lot of people might just be logging onto a website. It might just be listening to this podcast.
Yeah.
Or sending this to somebody who's like thought about it and like, this is the first step. It's just awareness. And awareness, though, I think needs to lead to action. And so do something, I guess, would be my takeaway from this. Well, Ben and Nicole, thank you so much for
Thank you,
being
guys.
here.
We
I
love
really
you guys
appreciate it,
so much.
You guys
Yeah,
too.
it's amazing. You guys, if this conversation stirred something in you, don't ignore it. Awareness changes little, action transforms. We'll see you next time on Packed with Purpose, where every backpack tells a story.
Bye-bye.